In every corner of the world, there are secrets, stories that exist beyond understanding, patiently waiting for someone brave enough to uncover them. And today, we are stepping into the shadows to find them. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror episode. Welcome to episode 30. I'm Aditya, and today I bring you 3 terrifying creepypasta-style stories, each more chilling than the last. New stories. New week. New fears. If you are new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell if you dare to see what comes next. Today, we'll explore 3 haunting tales, each twisting reality in its own horrifying way. The reflection that wasn't mine. The midnight subscriber. The whispering room. If you love horror like this, you are in the right place. Only on Dynamic Dark will you experience creepypasta-style terror blended with real psychological and haunted elements. For the full experience, put on your earphones, dim the lights, and let the darkness, suspense, and fear consume you. Now let's begin with today's first story, The Reflection That Wasn't Mine. It started as an ordinary evening. I was getting ready, brushing my teeth, the soft hum of the bathroom light filling the room. The air felt unusually still, almost heavy, and the faint dripping of water from the faucet sounded unnervingly loud. I leaned toward the mirror to adjust my reflection when I noticed something off. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a flicker from the bulb, or the shadow of my own hand moving slightly differently. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and stared again. But the reflection, it didn't behave like me. It lingered, almost sentient, pausing for a heartbeat longer than I did. And then, in the faintest motion, it moved slightly behind my own movements. A subtle tilt of the head, a ghost of a smile curling at the corner of its lips. My pulse quickened. I stepped closer, trying to rationalize it. It's just a reflection, I whispered to myself. Yet, it smiled when I didn't, blinked when my eyes stayed shut. I raised my hand, and it raised its hand a fraction later, just offbeat, just wrong. My stomach churned as shadows in the room twisted unnaturally, stretching across the walls and ceiling. The mirror seemed alive, distorting the edges of the room, elongating the corners, making the familiar bathroom feel alien and threatening. Over the next few nights, I tried to ignore it. I covered every reflective surface, from mirrors to windows, even my phone screen. Yet, it found ways to appear. It would flash across polished spoons, shimmer in darkened windows, even hover faintly on my laptop screen. Always there. Always watching. Always waiting. And with each appearance, the whispers began, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from the very glass, words I couldn't understand but somehow knew. One night, unable to resist the pull, I returned to the bathroom. The reflection grinned fully now, wide and unnatural, showing teeth too sharp, eyes darker than my own, glowing faintly in the dim light. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, and the figure leaned forward, pressing its palms against the mirror as if trying to escape. I backed away, heart hammering, my legs heavy and trembling. The air thickened around me, heavy with something unseen, something malevolent. Tonight, it's no longer just in the mirror. I can feel it behind me. Breathing. Watching. Waiting. Its smile stretches impossibly across its face, the eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that freezes me in place. The whispers have grown louder, more urgent, echoing directly inside my skull, twisting my own thoughts, making me question what is real. Every reflective surface in the room begins to shimmer, distort, and I realize with terror it's no longer bound to the glass. It has crossed over. I don't sleep in that room anymore. I avoid mirrors wherever I go. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is silent and my own breathing is the only sound, I catch a movement in the corner of my eye. A flicker. A shadow. And I know, with every fiber of my being, that it is still there. Watching. Waiting. Patient. Always waiting. But then I noticed it. My reflection, it didn't move like me. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the dim bathroom light, maybe a flicker from the old bulb, or the shadows stretching unnaturally along the cracked walls. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, tried to shake it off, but it didn't disappear. It blinked when I kept my eyes tightly shut. It smiled when I didn't. Every small movement I made, raising my hand, tilting my head, shifting my weight, it mirrored imperfectly, ever so slightly delayed, and sometimes subtly different. A tiny grin here, a head tilt there, almost imperceptible at first, but unmistakable. A chill ran down my spine. The bathroom, already dark, seemed to grow darker. The black fog thickened around my feet, calling as if alive. Shadows along the walls and ceiling bent unnaturally, reaching toward me. The reflection wasn't just mirroring me, it was studying me, aware of every twitch, every heartbeat. Its eyes were completely black, void-like, staring deep into mine. I could feel it probing, as if trying to understand me, searching for something inside me. I stepped closer, trembling. The reflection tilted its head at impossible angles, curling its lips into a sinister smile. Its hands pressed against the mirror differently than mine, fingers elongated, joints bending unnaturally. I tried to speak, but no sound escaped. The air thickened, cold, heavy, and oppressive. The black fog swirled around my legs, creeping up as if alive, while multiple black ghostly forms appeared in the corners, some tall, some crawling, some humanoid but distorted, all distinct, moving silently. I raised my hand slowly, and the reflection raised its hand too, but ever so slightly offbeat, ever so slightly different. Its grin widened. Tendrils of black mist began stretching from the edges of the mirror, wrapping around shadows, crawling along the floor and walls, teasing my senses. Reflections in the window, the faucet, even the phone screen showed glimpses of additional black spirits, all unique and horrifying, each moving independently, each seemingly aware of my fear. I tried to retreat, but the floor seemed to twist beneath me, the shadows reaching for me. The reflection took a step forward, merging its form with the swirling black fog, its figure expanding and contracting, like a living nightmare. The whispers started faintly, then grew louder, echoing in every corner of the room, indistinguishable words, yet I felt them in my mind, pressing against my thoughts. Time stretched. Every heartbeat felt like a minute. Every blink felt like an eternity. The black figures multiplied, crawling along walls, floating in air, slithering along the floor. Their forms constantly shifted, faceless humanoid, twisted elongated limbs, small crawling shapes, floating shadowy entities. They never repeated, never mirrored each other, always different, always terrifying. I was frozen, paralyzed with terror. The reflection stepped fully out of the mirror, its black eyes locking onto mine. Its fingers, elongated and sharp, reached toward me, merging with the fog and shadows, as if trying to pull me into the glass. The room distorted around me, the walls bending, the ceiling stretching, shadows enveloping everything. It was patient, observant, waiting. Every corner of the bathroom seemed alive, filled with unseen black forms, each one silently watching, each one threatening, each one ready to strike. Even now, I can feel the memory pressing against me, the black fog curling around my ankles, the black ghostly forms shifting at the edges of my vision, the reflection staring into me, always waiting. It is patient. It is watching. And I know that if I ever return, even for a second, it will be there. Waiting. A cold shiver ran down my spine. From the very first night I noticed it, the reflection had grown bolder, more deliberate, more aware. It was no longer subtle. Every movement I made, every blink, every breath, it mirrored me, but with uncanny deviations that set my nerves on fire. Whispers started emerging from the glass, soft at first, barely audible. Words I couldn't understand, syllables that didn't exist in any language I knew, yet somehow they felt familiar, like echoes from a memory I never had. Each night, the bathroom grew darker, heavier. The black fog thickened, curling around my feet and ankles, moving with intent. Shadows twisted along the walls, elongating, writhing, some creeping along the ceiling like living entities. The reflection began leaning forward when I stayed still, smiling when I didn't, tilting its head in impossible angles, and sometimes mimicking gestures I hadn't made at all. I tried to escape, leaving the bathroom door open. But the reflection wasn't confined to the mirror anymore. Its tendrils of black mist stretched outward, merging with the shadows around the room. Figures appeared in the corners, tall humanoid forms with elongated limbs, prowling shadow-like spirits, faceless entities floating silently. Each one distinct, all black, all watching, all patient. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, forming a chorus that seemed to echo from every reflective surface, the faucet, the cracked mirror, the window, even the small droplets of water on the floor. It felt as if the black entities were learning, understanding my fear, feeding off it. My own heartbeat echoed too loudly, synchronizing with the rhythm of the whispers, making me dizzy and disoriented. I reached toward the mirror, desperate to confront it, and the reflection reached back, but its hand was wrong. Fingers twisted, joints bent impossibly, and its grin widened unnaturally. Suddenly, a small cluster of black shadow forms emerged from the fog, slithering toward me silently, wrapping around my legs, crawling up the walls, floating through the ceiling, all moving independently yet as part of the same terrifying presence. The room seemed to distort. The walls stretched, the ceiling bent, and the black fog surged like a living entity, enveloping everything. Reflections in the mirror multiplied, the protagonist was no longer alone. Each reflection revealed a slightly different form of the black ghosts, some crawling, some floating, some humanoid but elongated, some faceless and amorphous. Every second, the tension grew, every shadow seemed alive. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped. My vision blurred, but I could still feel the cold tendrils of the black fog curling around me, the oppressive presence of the black ghosts pressing in from all sides, and the reflection's black eyes piercing into me. The whispers became deafening, words I couldn't comprehend yet somehow understood, echoing in my mind, shaking me to the core. Time lost all meaning. Seconds stretched to minutes, minutes to hours. The black fog swirled more violently, the shadow forms moving faster, splitting and merging continuously. The reflection stepped slightly out of the mirror, its presence merging with the fog, and for a brief moment, it looked like a mass of shifting black entities surrounding me, each tendril of darkness a different ghostly form. Even now, thinking back, I can feel the weight of the darkness, the cold wrapping around me, the whispers pressing into my mind, the black eyes watching, the fog crawling, the black ghosts shifting constantly. The tension never relented, it only grew, bolder, heavier, relentless. And I know, if I ever return to that bathroom, even for a moment, it will be there. Waiting. Watching. Always ready to rise again from the black shadows, the fog, and the glass itself. I tried covering every mirror, every reflective surface. Windows, spoons, even my phone screen. I stacked towels, newspapers, anything I could find, hoping to block the reflection, to hide from it. But nothing worked. Every time I thought I had contained it, every time I believed I was safe, it found new ways to appear. Always watching. Always waiting. The air in the bathroom thickened, heavy and cold, as the black fog coiled around my legs and ankles. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls and ceiling, bending and stretching as if alive. I could see them moving in impossible ways, shapes emerging and disappearing, some humanoid, some crawling, some amorphous, black ghosts of all forms, completely distinct, never repeating, each one more terrifying than the last. I looked at the cracked mirror again. My own reflection, or what I thought was mine, smiled wider than before, tilting its head at angels I couldn't replicate. Its black eyes pierced through me, reading my fear, learning it, feeding off it. The tendrils of black fog from the edges of the mirror started reaching outward, slithering along the walls, wrapping around the shadows, curling toward me. I backed away, but the floor seemed to bend, stretch, as if trying to trap me. The black ghostly figures multiplied, splitting into dozens of shapes, floating, crawling, twisting in ways that defied reality. Some hovered from the ceiling, some pressed against the walls, some slithered along the floor like living smoke. Each one had its own unique form, constantly changing, each more oppressive than the last. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. Every reflective surface seemed alive. The faucet reflected eyes that weren't mine. The spoons on the counter shifted into faces I didn't recognize. The window showed dozens of black silhouettes crawling and slithering outside, yet when I looked, nothing was there. Even the droplets of water on the counter reflected black ghostly forms, writhing like living things. The whispers returned, hundreds of voices overlapping, unintelligible yet pressing into my mind. They weren't just coming from the mirror anymore. They echoed from every corner, every shadow, every inch of the bathroom, even outside the door, as if the darkness itself had become alive. My heart raced uncontrollably, my vision blurred, the black fog coiled higher, reaching up, wrapping around my chest, my shoulders, tugging me closer to the mirror. I tried to run, to leave the bathroom entirely, but the space felt infinite. The shadows stretched, bending the walls and ceiling impossibly, the black fog moving like a living predator. The reflection, now partially out of the mirror, merged with the swirling fog, its hands elongated, black eyes glowing faintly, smiling in ways that weren't human. Around it, black ghostly forms of all shapes, some crawling, some faceless, some humanoid with distorted limbs, some floating shadows. Moved independently, pressing closer, constantly shifting, watching. Time ceased to exist. Seconds felt like hours, minutes like eternities. The black fog and shadow forms enveloped me, curling around my legs, arms, even head, never touching, yet heavy with presence. Reflections in mirrors, faucets, windows, phone screens, even in tiny droplets of water showed endless black forms, constantly shifting, each one unique. Every shadow seemed alive, writhing, reaching, pressing into the edges of my perception. Even now, recounting it, I can feel the oppressive darkness pressing down. I can see the black fog curling around my ankles, black ghosts shifting endlessly, the reflections, black eyes staring, always waiting. It wasn't just in the mirror anymore, it was everywhere. Watching, waiting, patient. And I knew, no matter what I covered, no matter what I blocked, it would always find a way. Always. Waiting. Watching. Ready. Tonight, it's no longer just in the mirror. I can feel it standing behind me. Breathing. Waiting. Its smile wider than ever. From the moment I entered the bathroom, the air felt heavier, thick with black fog that curled and twisted around my feet, rising up like living smoke. Shadows on the walls stretched unnaturally, bending and writhing as if alive, and from every corner, unique black ghostly forms emerged, floating ghosts with slightly scary tapering lower halves, faceless shadows lurking along walls and floor, shifting silhouettes appearing in faucets, windows, and even the tiny droplets of water on the floor. Each figure was different, constantly moving, merging, and splitting, creating a chaotic, oppressive presence that seemed to breathe along with the fog. I tried to turn around, but the space felt infinite, walls bending, ceiling lowering, bathroom growing impossibly larger, yet confining at the same time. I could feel the reflection in the mirror stretching out, stepping slightly into the room, black eyes glowing faintly, fingers elongated in impossible ways, smiling wider than ever. Whispers surrounded me from every angle, unintelligible yet pressing into my mind, merging with the fog, echoing from the shadows, from the walls, from the very air itself. The black tendrils of fog began curling around my arms and legs, climbing higher with each second, as the floating ghosts hovered closer, their scary lower halves tapering toward the floor, faceless shadows crawling silently along walls and ceiling, and shifting silhouettes appeared in every reflective surface. The oppressive presence pressed in from all sides. I could feel its breath on the back of my neck. Every time I tried to scream, my voice was swallowed by the darkness. The reflection laughed, grotesque and distorted, tilting its head, grinning wider than ever. Shadows twisted violently, merging with black fog, creating an almost solid mass of darkness around me. The floating ghosts, faceless shadows, and moving silhouettes all converged, forming an overwhelming swarm, each unique and horrifying, never repeating, some writhing, some crawling, some floating with those terrifying tapering lower halves. The sense of being watched, stalked, and trapped intensified, time slowed, breaths shortened, heart racing uncontrollably. I stumbled backward, trying to escape, but the bathroom seemed endless. The reflection moved with me, always in front, always behind, merging with the fog and shadows, its grin stretching impossibly wide, eyes black as voids. Tendrils of fog licked the walls, ceiling, floor, and my body, each movement precise and aligned. The whispers grew into a chorus, overlapping, echoing, suffocating, filling every corner, making it impossible to distinguish reality from nightmare. Even now, recounting it, I can feel the oppressive presence, the black fog curling around me, the faceless shadows creeping, floating ghosts with their scary tapering lower halves hovering just above the floor, and the reflections smile wider than ever. The climax of horror, the peak of fear, pressed into every nerve, every thought, every inch of my being. Tonight, it's not just the mirror, it's all around me. Watching. Waiting. Patient. Hungry. And I know, if I ever step into that bathroom again, even for a moment, it will be there. Always. And as I dared to turn around, I realized it wasn't just a reflection anymore. It had crossed over. The air grew impossibly colder, thick black fog coiling around my legs and ankles like living serpents, pressing, constricting, almost breathing with a life of its own. Shadows bent and stretched along the cracked walls, ceiling, and floor, writhing unnaturally, some crawling like silent predators, others floating with terrifying tapering lower halves, all shapes unique, never repeating. The reflection, once confined to the mirror, now hovered in the room itself, smiling grotesquely, eyes black voids, fingers elongating as if ready to grasp. Every reflective surface, mirrors, faucets, windows, droplets of water, even the glint of a spoon now showed multiple black ghostly forms, moving independently, writhing and shifting unpredictably. Faceless shadows skittered along walls and floor, tiny crawling entities scuttled across surfaces, and floating black forms hovered just above the floor, their lower halves tapering into nothingness, creating a surreal, oppressive maze of darkness. The black fog curled around me, merging with shadows and spirits, pressing against my chest, wrapping around my arms, following every breath, every heartbeat. I tried to scream, to move, to run, but the bathroom seemed infinite, stretching endlessly, walls bending and floor sinking, yet closing in simultaneously. The hovering reflection moved closer, its grin widening impossibly, whispering unintelligible words that pressed into my mind. The black ghosts shifted, merged, split, and multiplied, creating a living nightmare, each form unique, each movement unpredictable, floating, crawling, writhing, twisting in impossible ways. The oppressive presence surrounded me entirely. It was no longer just behind the mirror, it was all around, inside the room, inside the fog, inside the very shadows. Even now, recounting it, I can feel the lingering cold, the tendrils of black fog brushing against my skin, the faceless shadows lurking at the edges of vision, the floating ghosts with their scary tapering lower halves hovering ominously. It wasn't over. It had crossed over. And as I dared to breathe, I realized, the next time, it would follow me beyond this room, beyond this place. Watching. Waiting. Always. Patient. Hungry. And I knew the story isn't finished. Not yet. Today's second story is The Midnight Subscriber. It all began with a single notification at midnight. At first, I thought it was just another subscriber alert, a harmless ping on my phone. But then it came again. And again. Night after night, without fail. Each time the notification appeared, the screen glowed a little differently, darker than usual, as if something was watching through it. The air around me grew colder when it arrived, a thick black fog creeping along the edges of my room, curling like living tendrils that seemed to reach toward me. Shadows shifted unnaturally along walls and ceiling, bending and stretching as if alive, some crawling along the floor, others hovering with slightly scary tapering lower halves. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a glitch, but the notifications became different each time. Sometimes the subscriber count increased by strange numbers that made no sense, other times a faceless shadow appeared in the corner of my screen. Tiny crawling black entities moved across the keyboard, flickering in and out like they weren't quite real, while amorphous blobs twisted unpredictably around the edges of my vision. Whispers emanated from the phone itself, unintelligible but pressing into my mind, each word a subtle push of dread, sending chills down my spine. Every time I looked up from the screen, I could see reflections in my glasses, windows, or even the black surface of the phone, shapes constantly changing, some humanoid-like, others completely unrecognizable, floating or crawling, merging and splitting, each unique, never repeating. The oppressive presence pressed in from all sides, making the familiar room feel infinite, warped, and threatening. My heart raced, breaths shortening, yet I couldn't look away from the notification that seemed alive, pulsing, hungry, as if it knew I was watching. I reached to silence it, but the moment I touched the phone, the black fog surged, creeping across the floor toward me, shadows bending toward my form. Floating entities hovered above, their lower halves tapering into nothingness. Faceless shadows crawled along the walls, tiny crawling black forms skittered across surfaces, and amorphous black blobs twisted unpredictably, merging with the fog and shadows, creating a surreal and terrifying atmosphere. Every reflection, every surface, seemed to multiply the presence, making me feel trapped inside a nightmare that had breached reality itself. By the end of that first night, as the notification pinged one last time, I knew it wasn't just a subscriber. Something had crossed a boundary, something that watched, waited, and now existed alongside me. And I understood the story was only beginning. Each notification was different, messages I hadn't typed, images I hadn't seen. And every time I looked, the subscriber count, it stayed the same. At first, I thought it was a harmless glitch, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Black fog shifted along the floor like a living presence, curling and creeping closer with each notification. Wispy floating spirits with smoky, semi-transparent lower halves drifted through the room, while distorted mini-humanoid shapes stretched and worked unnaturally, hovering near the ceiling or crawling along walls. Misty shadow serpents slithered along the floor and furniture, disappearing and reappearing unpredictably. Flickering black smoke entities with faint glowing eyes emerged from corners, phasing in and out of walls, while shards of shadow split and merged through the fog and reflections on the phone screen. Each ghostly form was unique, constantly shifting, never repeating, creating the sensation that the room itself had become alive. Shadows bent unnaturally, walls seemed to lean closer, and furniture appeared warped under the oppressive presence. Whispers emanated from the phone, echoing in unintelligible tones, visualized as moving black mist curling through the fog and ghostly shapes. The phone screen reflected not just notifications, but the forms themselves, tiny distorted faces, elongated limbs, floating mist, and twisted shapes appearing before vanishing the instant I tried to focus. Black tendrils from corners and fog pressed closer, curling around objects and nearly touching me. Every new notification seemed to animate a different ghostly form, crawling, floating, twisting unpredictably, filling every corner with tension, dread, and a feeling of being trapped. By the time I realized the subscriber count wasn't changing, I understood something else. The midnight subscriber wasn't just a number. It was aware. It was here. And it was shaping the room, the fog, the shadows, and the ghosts themselves, building a nightmare I couldn't escape. Then it started following me. Not online, but here, in my room, while I slept. I'd hear faint whispers near my ear, soft, almost like static, but too deliberate to be noise. The air turned icy, each breath visible in the darkness. Shadows moved on their own, darting across walls, twisting unnaturally, like they were alive. The black fog rose higher from the corners, pulsing with every heartbeat, carrying shapes inside it, wispy spirits with hollow faces, serpentine shadows slithering across the bed, and small, distorted figures crouching beside me, motionless but watching. Each night, they came closer, blending with the dark until I couldn't tell if my eyes were open or if the nightmare had simply never ended. No matter what I did, the notifications wouldn't stop. I blocked, deleted, even turned off my phone, but it still found a way. Every time the clock struck midnight, the screen glowed on its own, cold, pale light spreading across the room. A chilling presence lingered behind me, breathing, waiting, always watching. One night, I woke up to a faint glow, my phone screen flashing again. But then, I saw it. A tall, shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed, motionless. The air froze, and the walls seemed to close in. My heart pounded as the familiar notification sound echoed again, but this time, it didn't come from the phone. It came from inside the room. The black fog thickened, shapes flickering within it, wispy smoke spirits, serpentine shadows crawling up the walls, and something crawling from beneath the bed, slow and deliberate. The figure tilted its head, almost smiling, as the glow from my phone reflected in its hollow eyes. The sound played one final time, ping, and everything went dark. I tried to escape, but the shadows followed. Every step I took, the black fog twisted around me, moving faster, reaching higher. The subscriber, or whatever it was, had crossed the screen and now crossed into reality. Wispy spirits and serpentine shadows swirled in every corner, distorted mini humanoids hovered just out of reach, and shards of black mist merged with the fog, pressing closer. I stumbled backward, gasping, realizing I wasn't just haunted online anymore, the entity had entered my world. And I knew this was only the beginning. Today's final story is The Whispering Room. There was an old room in an abandoned building at the edge of town. Everyone avoided it except me. The wooden door creaked as I stepped inside, and a thick black fog curled around the corners and ceiling. Wispy floating spirits drifted silently, distorted mini humanoids crouched in shadows, and shadow serpents slithered along the walls. Shards of black mist split and merged unpredictably, flickering with glowing eyes. Whispers echoed, curling through the fog, pressing into my mind. Every reflection, mirrors, dusty glass, even puddles, showed constantly changing, unique forms. Curiosity had led me straight into a nightmare that seemed alive. The moment I stepped inside, I heard whispers, soft, unintelligible voices echoing from the walls. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. Thick white fog curled around corners, ceiling, and floor, moving like living smoke. Black ghost forms drifted and slithered unpredictably, wispy spirits floating silently, distorted mini humanoids crouching in shadows, serpentine shadows gliding across walls, flickering black mist entities with glowing eyes, and shards of black shadow splitting and merging. Reflections in mirrors and puddles revealed constantly changing forms, never repeating. Whispers twisted through the fog and shapes, pressing into my mind. Every step I took revealed movement, shadows stretching unnaturally, the room alive and aware. Curiosity had led me here, and now the dread had begun. The whispers grew louder. They called my name, soft but insistent, echoing from the walls and floorboards. Shadows twisted unnaturally, moving against the dim moonlight filtering through broken windows. Every corner seemed alive, watching, waiting. The thick white fog swirled and shifted like it had its own mind, carrying black ghost forms, wispy floating spirits drifting unpredictably, tiny distorted humanoids crouching in corners, serpentine shadow creatures gliding along walls, and flickering black mist entities with glowing eyes. Shards of shadow split and merged, appearing and vanishing at random. Each step I took made the room pulse with dread, every surface hiding something that could move the instant I wasn't looking. Curiosity had turned into fear, and the nightmare was closing in. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The room stretched endlessly, corridors bending impossibly. The whispers, they came from everywhere at once, swirling through the thick white fog filled with black ghost forms, wispy spirits, distorted mini-humanoids, shadow serpents, and flickering mist entities, moving unpredictably, pressing in on me from all sides. One shadow separated from the rest, forming a tall, faceless figure dripping darkness. It loomed over me as the whispers turned into piercing screams inside my head. Thick white fog churned violently, carrying massive black ghost forms, wispy spirits, distorted humanoids, shadow serpents, and flickering mist entities, merging and splitting unpredictably, closing in from every direction. And then silence. The room collapsed into shadows, the thick white fog swirling and dissipating as if devoured by the darkness. The black ghost forms, towering wispy spirits, massive distorted humanoids, shadow serpents, flickering mist entities vanished into the corners, leaving behind only hints of movement, lingering in the edges of perception. I was left alone, or so I thought. The whispers never truly stopped. Soft, unintelligible, curling through the remnants of fog and shadows, echoing in my mind. They were patient. They were waiting. Waiting for the next visitor, someone curious enough to step into the room and into the nightmare that had no end. That was the end of episode 30 of Dynamic Dark. If you enjoyed these terrifying stories, make sure to comment below which story scared you the most. The best comment will be pinned by me, Aditya. So, don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications bell if you dare to see what comes next. And share with your friends and family too. Or you can suggest a topic for the next episode, like a foreign urban legend, haunted place, or any other creepy horror story. The suggestion with the most likes might be featured in the next episode. Until then, keep listening to terrifying stories because we'll be back soon with episode 31. And in the next episode, we'll bring you creepypasta horror stories. Yes, an English episode this time. Stay tuned and keep watching the horror episodes of Dynamic Dark. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new horror episode. New fears, new darkness, and new secrets. Join the Dynamic Dark family with 3 brand new terrifying stories.